You thought the rise of Donald Trump was the first time an outsider shook up the political establishment? Think again. 15 years before Trump, the Netherlands experienced the rise of Pim Fortuyn. Fortuyn was a professor in social sciences who became a media personality in the 90s. Trump got into politics by registering as a Republican, and he ran for president as a Republican candidate. Fortuyn tried to do the same thing. At the time, in November 2001, the newly formed party, Leefbaar Nederland, Liveable Netherlands, was looking for a lead candidate. Fortuyn was chosen by a huge majority of the party, but everything fell apart 2 months later, in early February of 2002, 3 months before the election. Fortuyn didn't want to be a salesperson. He didn't want to keep his opinions to himself and only talk about what the party stood for. He wanted to say whatever he wanted to say. So after what would later be called the Night of Fortuyn, when he sat down with the heads of the party, he was fired as the lead candidate and started his own party a couple of weeks later, the LPF, List Pim Fortuyn. He was hugely popular, and he was on television all the time. Every program wanted to have him on, not because they liked him or what he had to say, but because he needed to be stopped. He needed to be attacked, and he needed to be discredited. The media did everything they could to frame him as a dangerous and even evil person. This is also the time when people started to use the term demonization. Fortuyn was being demonized by the media, clearly, and we all saw it happening. It was the first time we realized what the media were capable of. We realized that when the media didn't get their way, they would do whatever they needed to do. They would go as far as they needed to go. They would become as nefarious and ridiculous as they could, and they wouldn't care. That's common knowledge now, but 21 years ago it was new, and it was fascinating. When it comes to political figures, what usually happens is these figures put themselves in a box. They are left, right, green, liberal, socialist. Politicians model themselves and what they seemingly stand for after their respective parties. They pick a box, step into it, internalize the values and positions of that particular box, and then make a career out of representing those values and positions. The only thing the media have to do is to test them, quiz them on how well they've internalized everything, how well they belong to the party. And when the media don't think that you're a good fit for the party, they try to find something that isn't consistent with the positions of the box that you want to be in. And that's how they create scandals. Oh, so you think this is a good idea, don't you? But it isn't green, now is it? How can you support this if you're the leader of the Green Party? But then someone comes along who doesn't play the same game. Someone who's all over the map, who doesn't abide by the party line. Trump doesn't represent the Republican Party. Trump represents Trump. Fortuyn's new party wasn't really a party. He had quickly put together a list of people, but they didn't have a say in what the LPF stood for. They were filler. Fortuyn represented the party, and the party represented Fortuyn. Now, Fortuyn didn't have a box, didn't have a broad ideology. He thought more pragmatically and was very hard to pin down for that reason. So he basically forced the media to debate him on separate issues. Because normally, you can predict a politician's stance on a certain topic based on the ideology of his party. But Fortuyn's party didn't have an ideology. Just like Trump, it had a personality. Now, the media doesn't like debating someone who's better educated and who has better thought things through than they have. TV presenters, talk show hosts, and journalists were at a loss for counter-arguments. So what did? they began smearing him. He was branded a racist and a fascist and a sexist. Sound familiar? There's no doubt they would have called him a Russian spy, but they hadn't come up with that one yet. They became more nefarious and more ridiculous every day. But it didn't work. He only got more popular. He got to the point where he was uncancelable. Now, why didn't it work? Why didn't the smearing and the demonization work? Well, Fortuyn was unashamed. On the surface, Fortuyn and Trump are nothing alike. Trump's a businessman, married to a fashion model, proud of his golden toilet. Fortuyn was a professor, openly gay, and he wasn't afraid to be vulnerable on camera, angry on camera, and walk away during a live interview. And when you're not ashamed of yourself and of what you do, what you like, and what you want, nothing sticks to you. Being unconditionally, wholeheartedly, and fearlessly unashamed is a powerful tool. It's a powerful mindset. And when you're unshameable, the media will try anything and everything to make you feel ashamed, to make you feel afraid, or make you feel guilty. That's how they try to grab onto you. That's how they try to find a way in, to hook themselves into you. And once you show signs of shame, fear, or guilt, they got you. They will make a box out of it and put you inside. Just like 15 years later with Trump, Fortuyn was constantly being compared to Hitler. Why? Because the media were at the end of their rope. They couldn't grab him. They couldn't control him. And then it goes from bad to worse, and from worse to playing the Hitler card. If they fail to discredit, the next step is to dehumanize. A former left-wing politician debated Fortuyn on television and called him an inferior human being. And this was even before he got into politics. There was something they just couldn't stand about him. And it wasn't that he was right-wing, because he wasn't. He was of no wing. He didn't associate himself with anybody else. They hate that. Why do they hate that? Because it shows them that you can be authentic, transparent, unapologetic, and popular at the same time. Authenticity is the biggest fear of the establishment. The whole existence of Pim Fortuyn triggered them immensely because it brought up their own insecurities and their own shame. The openness of Fortuyn and Trump triggers the closed-mindedness of the media and political class. Fortuyn's unashamedness brought their shamefulness to the surface. It highlighted their own shadow. So instead of attacking the messenger, they should have looked within. They should have been brave enough to face the lower frequencies in their own energy field. But they didn't want to. And they weren't aware enough to know that they didn't want to. They were just thinking, this guy needs to be stopped. He needs to lose the election by all means necessary to prove to themselves, to him, and to everybody else that you couldn't be authentic, transparent, unapologetic, and popular at the same time. That's not how the world worked. In simpler terms, they were afraid of him, not because of his opinions or policies, but because of the way he was. Now, he would have been prime minister. He would have gotten the majority of votes, but he was assassinated 9 days before the election. It wasn't shame, it wasn't fear or anger or guilt that got him in the end. It was pride. He knew his life was at risk. He got death threats. The authorities knew his life was at risk. The government knew his life was at risk. But they played a little game where they said, he's not a politician yet, so we can't offer him the security we offer other politicians. So even when Fortuyn knew his life may be in danger, he refused to pay for his own security. And his reasoning was, if the government thinks I'm in danger, then the government should provide security. I shouldn't even have to ask. That's pride.
Is het niet wat flauw dat u in de loop van deze middag een aanklacht tegen die taartgooiers heeft ingediend?
Nee, dat vind ik niet. Ja. Dat is ook op aanraden van de advocaten Spong en Hammerstein gebeurd. En niet zozeer om die taartgooiers aan te pakken, maar omdat er rond mij nu een sfeer aan het ontstaan is die bepaald bedreigend is. En zij willen de Nederlandse regering wijzen op zijn verantwoordelijkheid om te zorgen voor mijn veiligheid.
Maar hoe doe je dat als je een aanklacht indient tegen 3 willekeurige taartgooiers?
Nou, om dat nu even aan te pakken. Ja, het zijn juristen, dus dat is aan hun. En
maar
nogmaals, het gaat ons niet om die mensen.
Nee, ja. U wilt via hen de politiek aanspreken, begrijp ik dat? Of de justitie?
Er ontstaat hier een sfeer. En ik merk het ook aan correspondentie en dergelijke. Ik wil er allemaal niet te diep op ingaan. Maar waarbij ik toch serieus voor mijn veiligheid moet vrezen. Nou, en ik wil normaal verkiezingscampagne kunnen voeren. En dan moeten zij dus ook maar zorgen dat die veiligheid gegarandeerd is. En daar gaat het om.
If you demand something to come in a specific way, at a specific time, in a specific form, from a specific place or person, you're demanding that reality should be different. The way it is doesn't align with my belief system and my sense of honor. So I'm putting my foot down and force reality to change. It doesn't work. You're in resistance and you're stubborn and you're in denial. Honor is just a fancy way of saying, I need the outside world to validate my pride. So they found their way in by doing nothing, and they let him hang himself with his own rope. Pride brought him down, but nobody saw it coming. We don't assassinate political candidates in this country. We're civilized. This is not America. This is the Netherlands. So it came as a shock when Fortuyn was shot and killed on the premises of the Media Park. The Media Park is the Hollywood of Dutch television. It's the heart of Dutch media. So obviously, this was the end of the demonization game. Anyone who participated in it never talked about it ever again. Not even now. It's been over 20 years. Do people say, yeah, we demonized the guy and I regret doing it? Nope. Never said a word. Like it never happened. And the same people, the people who worked for the media in 2001, 2002, and still work there in 2015, 2016, the same people who demonized Fortuyn jumped on the demonization bandwagon against Trump. Like they hadn't learned a thing. They got triggered, again, by a different man, but by the same manner. Now, do these media people know what is factually accurate? Yes. Do they know what is morally right and morally wrong? Yes. Do they know that by smearing somebody without any evidence that they're manipulating the public? Yes. Don't they know they're putting someone's life in danger? Yes. So they're bad people. No. You say they're not bad people, but they don't have a moral compass. Oh, yes, they do. They have a moral compass. They just turn it off. Not consciously, because these are not inherently bad or evil people. They're highly unconscious people. They're being blindsided by their own shadow. Their shadow, their trauma and lower frequencies, bubble up to the surface, and instead of dealing with that, they project their unresolved issues onto someone else. They turn someone else into the bad guy because they deny the bad guy in themselves. If you feel a lot of shame and someone comes along who's unashamed, the first thing you think is, that person is not allowed to be this way. And then that moral compass goes right out the window. These people in media and politics are led by their triggers, and they don't even realize it because they're highly unconscious. That's why they're also extremely susceptible to groupthink. Unconscious people like the safety of a group. As long as you follow the rules of the group, what you do, what you say, what you think, what you wear, you minimize the chance you get triggered. These people like the predictability of a particular group because they don't want to deal with all those uncomfortable feelings. So they seek out a group that they can belong to. They don't pretend to think like the other members think. No, they internalize that particular way of thinking. The point is, they're not faking it. They actively adopt the opinions of the group. They teach themselves to change their way of thinking. It's a voluntary brainwash, basically. The media is a group, and the people within that group changed their opinion or waited to even have an opinion of Fortuyn or Trump until the group gave them one. It's not that the opinion of the group is a sort of average of all the different opinions within that group. That's not a thing. It's also not a thing that people have an opinion and then look for a group with that same opinion. That would mean that people are changing groups all the time. That's not what's going on. Once you're in a group, you subscribe to the group opinion. You internalize the group opinion and you convince yourself that opinion is the right opinion to have. That's what keeps you safe. So in the case of demonizing someone, where everybody teams up to essentially destroy someone's life, that is not a calculated plan. It's not a conspiracy where everybody gets their marching orders. Okay, folks, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. These are the contingency plans. We're going to tactically and surgically bring this person down. Let's brand Fortuyn as a dangerous man, even though he's not. Keep doing it, and he'll lose the election. That's not what happened. What happened was the opinion of the media group was, Fortuyn is a dangerous man. We need to stop him for the good of the country. And everyone in the group adopted this sentiment and made their own plans accordingly. Groupthink actually works way better than an actual conspiracy. Because in a conspiracy, you're dealing with hired guns. In case of groupthink, you're dealing with true believers. As long as we don't understand the mechanisms that led to the demonization of Pim Fortuyn, how unconsciousness plays a role in it, the fear of the shadow within oneself, history will keep repeating itself until we get it, until we get brave enough to face our own demons instead of making demons out of the people we see on TV. Dit was de Interdimensionale Talkshow, aflevering 89. Tot volgende keer.